I am very excited to introduce our next session. We are going to be hearing about some preliminary findings from some very innovative research that we commissioned called the Youth Livelihood Diaries research project. I've been watching this very, very closely since we decided to do it some time ago. This work was done by a research company called Low Income Financial Transformation, or LIFT. And to walk us through the initial findings, we have Claudia Pompa. Claudia is a recognized specialist on workforce and skills development with deep experience in youth entrepreneurship and youth financial services. She was previously a senior researcher with the Overseas Development Institute. So please join me in welcoming Claudia Pompa to the stage.
Thank you, Jason. As my fellow panelists get into their seats, let me introduce you to the Youth Livelihood Diaries research panel. Industry reports demonstrate that youth combine multiple income sources, yet we do not really understand how youth engage in mixed livelihoods or what the implications of that are for policy and programming. This project, which was commissioned by the Research Evaluation and Learning team at MasterCard Foundation, tries to answer some burning questions, and I was supposed to do this before. There we go. Including what livelihood strategies do youth employ? Given these livelihoods, what are the needs of youth around economic opportunities? And also, how do these strategies and needs vary across issues like gender, age, country, and region? As many of you know, diaries are very useful in building evidence through systematic data collection. This particular research worked with 126 participants in Ghana and 142 participants in Uganda. And during this panel, we will discuss how the research was conducted, what are some of the very interesting preliminary findings, but we'll also leave you with a lot of questions to spur the discussion for the next 2 days. And before we go on into the discussion, we will watch a short video.
This Youth Livelihoods Diaries research is being done in Uganda and in Ghana. The respondents are 18 to 24 years old. This research has been designed to challenge preconceived ideas about youth livelihood. One of the big learnings is that practically everybody is juggling a lot of different income streams. There's almost nobody who's just focusing on one single way of earning a living. This mixed livelihoods is almost an identity. One of the biggest surprises of the research is that when we asked straight off to youth, would you prefer to have your own business or would you prefer to have stable employment? 2/3 at least would prefer to have their own business. You see over time the relationship to agriculture shifting a little bit. When they're 15, they will vouch, I will never rely on agriculture for my income. And then after experiencing how difficult the alternatives are, they realize that the way their parents live might still be an option for them as well. So you see the older youth are more focused on agriculture.
Nkuba kwa matafali, nsima kwa mchanga, ndikola emirimu gyonna sobola okufuna esente edinansobozesa okwaya ebintu byange byendikwenda nga enkoko, embuzi n'ente. Okusomesebwa kwendi kunako kutono n'ensonga lwaki era nkayenda okusomesebwako okusingawo mu nkoko n'ente.
It's important to listen to young people and get their views because young people know themselves better than anyone else. And if you ask these young people, you're able to get evidence-based information. Young people have different jobs and they really love doing different jobs. Young people are not lazy. Young people in Africa are working.
If we harness the potential of all young people in Africa, we'll be able to support them to get decent living, to get reasonable income, and to build their lives and to build their nations.
So joining me in the panel today, I have three wonderful speakers. First of all, Anne-Marie von Swinderen is the founder of the Low-Income Financial Transformation, LIFT, a research company which is dedicated to diaries research. Then we have Gabriel Felli, a research supervisor for LIFT. Gabriel works with a group of young researchers in Ghana. And we have Justine Kutaira, a field researcher for LIFT, also in Uganda, where she's responsible for conducting interviews and collecting data in Iganga. Is that correct? Okay, great. So now that we know who's whom, let's start with the first question, and I'll have 3 rounds of questions to the panelists, and then we'll open this for discussion, okay? So, Anne-Marie, I wanted to start with you because you've also been involved with the work that Youth Start Financial Diaries did in Togo and Ethiopia. And now you are doing this project in Ghana and Uganda. Can you explain us a little bit why diaries are a good methodology and what can we learn from them?
Okay, you have already introduced how the methodology works primarily. It's very important the respondents are interviewed over a full year. And one respondent is always interviewed by the same researcher. And as you said, every 2 weeks we interview them, and the interview lasts about 30 minutes. And the first part of the interview, 20 minutes roughly, we cover the repeat questions. So these questions are asked at each interview. They cover livelihoods and also financial questions. We maintained most of the financial questions that were asked for the Youth Start Financial Diaries research. So we are building information about data about 4 countries. The livelihoods questions are very much about what type of work, all the different types of work people are doing over time. So on agriculture, we're asking about the different crops they're growing, about different forms of livestock, and about all the different types of horticulture. And then we ask how much time they spend on that and how much income they earn from that. So the methodology has many advantages, and particularly that it provides us with time series information about each individual respondent over a full year, so that shows us exactly what happens to their economic lives. This gives us particularly insight into the huge fluctuations of the work situation of people. So 2 weeks, they might have a lot of work, and some next 2 weeks, they have nothing at all. There are many advantages to this research method, and the one that I want to highlight now is that the respondents actually really enjoy being part of the research. So, in fact, 97% of them said that they would highly recommend to other people to participate in such a research. The reason why they enjoy it is because they themselves feel they get a very good overview about their own behavior. They understand really what they're doing by reporting to somebody else. And they say they also learn from the questions that we're asking. It makes them, well, it makes them think. And The other thing that they enjoy is that the research is two ways. We are asking them a lot of questions, but they can also make suggestions, what we should ask about, and they can, to a certain extent, they can steer the research. And maybe the most important is that we give feedback about the findings. We tell people what we have learned from what they're saying. And for example, we prepare this type of booklet for the individual respondent. So this booklet is for Moderator. It's specially written for her. It has all an overview of all her answers about her savings, about different work that she has done. And it will only ever be printed once and given to her, apart from this case. So it's a very simple methodology, and it's actually quite easy to implement, quite straightforward, and the results are quite powerful.
Great, that's very interesting things already. 97% of them want to actually continue research. I mean, for everyone who's involved in research, that's a very high proportion. And I think the booklet is extremely powerful. It's maybe something that we can dig deeper during the Q&A. Gabriel, let me move back to you now, because you are a supervisor working with a group of young researchers in Ghana. Yeah. Can you explain how the peer-to-peer engagement works, and why is it so important to have young researchers involved in this project?
Yeah. Thank you very much. With the peer-to-peer engagement in a research like the Youth Livelihood Diaries research, it's very important because the diaries is about taking information from the youth for a period of time. And to be able to do that, we see that using the youth to interview the youth will be very good because it will go a long way to create a very good relationship between the respondent and the researcher. In that case, there's trust that is built between them. And so they're able to give information that they wouldn't have normally given if it's an older researcher. We say this because with an older researcher, he may be quick to judge the respondent. Maybe whatever answers the respondent is given is for his age group. But with an older one, he may be quick to judge what the respondent is given. We also say they will be comfortable to share information because with an older researcher, maybe whatever information they're given, they may not feel comfortable to share it because, like where I come from in Ghana, it's not easy or common for a young person to share information about how he's able to generate finances, how he's able to make money with an elderly person. Those kind of information is difficult to share with an elder person. So when we use a youth to youth, it's very, very comfortable for them to be able to share such information. We also say it is easy for the respondent to be able to share information with them because the researcher will be able to understand whatever information the respondent is given. Because an easy understanding of the research of the respondent will let everything, all the research we are trying to gather, be very clear to the purpose of the research. Thank you.
Thank you. Justine, I've heard these stories that the young researchers actually have WhatsApp groups in each country. And they use WhatsApp not just for fun, but actually for research. So can you explain what are these WhatsApp groups and how are you using them?
Okay, in Uganda, Ghana, people are really using WhatsApp to communicate and also to make our work lively. Why? Majorly because it's a trend. Everywhere we are seeing, people are WhatsApping. You can easily exchange messages. You can easily exchange photos. So it's the trend all over the world, communicating from one area to another. And then we also see that researchers majorly use the WhatsApp to share information concerning what's taking place. Say like in Uganda, we are able to know what is really taking place in Ghana because we are WhatsApping. They send us photos, videos showing events which are taking place in those different areas. And indeed, we feel as if we are really in such areas. Then we also share information with our management. In most cases, our managements are majorly in different countries, like we have members in Rwanda, Ethiopia, Netherlands, but with the WhatsApp, we are in just like one country because we easily communicate to many people at just a single moment, moreover at a very low cost. And then still, the youths and the researchers normally use WhatsApp to share experiences. You know, with the use of the smartphones in the field, you find that one can get stuck anywhere, and in his questionnaire, you will just send an SMS or a WhatsApp message to a supervisor who will directly communicate to the management team, and of course, within just a few seconds, you will get a feedback. And also, we find that through sharing the experiences in the field, we are able to transfer videos which tend to be heavy and cannot be transferred using the email. So they are easily transferred, and really you feel you can be here, but you feel you are really in the field because you really know what is really taking place. You are aware of who is in the garden, how she's doing it, what kind of method she's doing, and indeed, it has really helped us in doing our research. We really appreciate the WhatsApp.
I think we all appreciate WhatsApp, right? And, and I think that it's just very interesting because when they mention this, as a researcher, you sometimes realize that it's a very lonely work. And you know, when you go out there in the field and start collecting data, that it becomes very lonely. But when you have this community with whom you share your experiences and who you can talk to, makes the work so much more enjoyable. Justine, we also spoke yesterday about the fact that a lot of the research participants in Uganda, they're very young, but they're already parents. How is this affecting their ability to earn a livelihood?
Yeah, in Uganda particularly, and the eastern region where I come from, and where I'm working currently, that is the Busoga region of Jinja, Iganga, and Mayuge, you find that many young youths are becoming parents at a very young age. I have an example of having a mother of 30 years, and that mother has a daughter of around 15 years, and at the same time, that daughter is having a kid of around 2 to 3 years. So you find that in such a scenario, it is very hard for such a family to earn a living. And one of the most difficult points is that these young parents are majorly affected in their mobility, most especially the females, whereby she has to breastfeed the kid at home, she has to do the cooking, she has to do all the house chores, and of course she cannot easily move from one place to another in doing the other kinds of work. So she's always closed at home, and in case she's to move, she'll only go to the garden and moreover practice the traditional farming methods because she's not aware of the modern skills. And then we also see that most of these young parents are normally school dropouts, and they don't have the required skills, they don't have the required knowledge to acquire employment elsewhere, because if you are to get a better income generating job, you need the skills, you need the knowledge, but somebody dropped out of school in P7, she is not having any skill apart from the skills learned from the parents, neighbors, and other friends. So such kind of person can't really compete on the job market because she lacks all that it needs to be employed. And then we also see that for the boys, they are young parents, they have completely nothing. They have no resource. And yet, if you are to be somebody, you need to have the minimum resource, which is half an acre of land. But these are young boys, already parents, but without any single resource. And indeed, they cannot participate. Instead, they end up gambling, they end up doing other casual labors, hence affecting their ability in earning a living. Thank you.
Very interesting findings right from the field. Gabriel, you work as a supervisor, so I know that you've go through all of the communities, you've met all of the participants. You guys have been collecting data bi-weekly for the past 6 months. And although there are a lot of already super rich emerging findings, one of the questions that always draws my attention is, what were some of the surprises? What were the things that you did not expect coming that you saw during these past 6 months?
Thank you. A lot of things really surprised me because what we anticipated or what we thought about the youth in the field before we went to the field, we seem to see so many different things. One of them is the attitude of the youth towards agriculture. I thought in the rural areas where there are no other economic activities going on, I expected more youth to go into agriculture, to develop it, move from the old ways of farming into better ways of doing things. But we find out that most of them, interestingly, are not going to that direction. The fact is that they are not ready to leave it completely because they will always come back to it to farm for the family, to farm for domestic consumption. But they are not ready to develop it, to go into it deeper. That's one of the things that really surprised me because I was thinking that most of us in the towns, in the townships, get our produce from the rural areas. So I thought they would take advantage of that, and now especially most of the farming population in Ghana, they are growing older, so I thought the youth would take advantage of that. But that's interestingly not the case. Another thing that surprised me is that most of the youth, you find out that they are doing a lot of things to survive, a lot of livelihood strategies they are taking to survive. But most of them are not learning them from school. They are learning these things from home and from their peers and from their colleagues. I thought most of them would have rather been learning this from schools to get more information, to be able to adopt it, to be able to get jobs. But these skills they are learning, these skills that they have, which they are using to earn a living, they are really learning them from their homes, from their family, but not from school. So these are things that really surprised me when we got to the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. So agriculture is a part-time activity already coming apparently very strongly from the findings. And where do young people learn skills, or where do they get them from? So things that we need to start thinking about as we continue our discussion. Anne-Marie, let me get back to you now. So you guys are doing work in Ghana and in Uganda, and if I understand correctly, in very different regions, not to mention in very different countries. So what are some of the differences that you are seeing across region and across countries?
Right, yes, we are working in Ghana, right in the northern part, in Navrongo. It's a single season, single rain season area. It's really low income. Our respondents are primarily very poor or poor. In Uganda, we're working in quite a different location. It's quite close to the capital. It's a thriving agricultural zone. It's Jinja, Iganga, and Mayuge. And also the respondents are roughly upper poor or even comfortable. So we expected really a number of differences between the two countries, partly because of the countries and partly because of the level of income. And the surprising thing is that actually mostly we're finding the same patterns. So what Gabriel was just mentioning about people getting their skills from their parents, from other family members, or maybe from friends, we definitely see that in Uganda as well. And the other finding about the great challenges that women have compared to men, that having children is tying them to their home, and is actually just having the child makes employers think there's no point employing that woman. We see that very much in both countries. And the agricultural, the attitude to agriculture is also remarkably similar. In Uganda, where obviously the opportunities are bigger and there's much more access to markets, we also see that the majority of our respondents are regarding agriculture as something that they will use for their staple food. So they will never stop growing maize, but they don't regard it as their profession, and well, very few of them are going wholeheartedly into agriculture and investing their time. They rather invest in the other things. So the important finding of this research is that actually young persons across countries, across climatic zones, across regions are actually quite similar.
Very interesting, and let's keep thinking about that in terms of what does it mean for programming and policies, where we usually tend to think, let's focus on the differences, and, how do we do that? But we'll get there with the questions. So, Gabriel, let's talk about now about mixed livelihoods. The previous panel hinted at it, and they gave us a very nice framework to think about mixed livelihoods, but also, what are the kind of mixed livelihood strategies that you think young people are using, or that you see people using in Ghana?
Well, in Ghana, the youth adopt a lot of livelihood strategies to earn a living, especially when it comes to our side, the northern part of Ghana, in Avrongo, where we have just one rainy season. Most of the youth go into agriculture during the rainy season. What happens is that we have a very short period of rains, and so they just take that advantage to go into the farming. They farm during the rainy season, and then in the dry seasons, they also try to do gardens and then farm. We have an irrigation site, so people also go to that site to do their farms to produce rice. The youth also learn apprenticeship. Most of the ladies go into making of hair and seamstress apprenticeship. The boys try to learn motor mechanics. They learn welding and other things to earn a living, to earn a skill which will earn them a living in the future. The youth also adopt businesses, small businesses. They are not able to immediately generate startup capitals to do a business. So what they do is that they go to maybe big business people, take some of their products, and then they sell, and then they are paid on commission. So that's how they earn a living. We also have most of the youth going to do casual labor, most of it at construction sites and then lorry stations where they carry goods of people from one place to another to earn a living. These are most of the livelihood strategies that the youth adopt in my area in Ghana. The interesting thing is that there are so many livelihood strategies, but it's very common to find that one person is doing most of these activities just to earn a living. They don't just go for one thing, but it's very common to find that one person is doing most of them at the same time to earn a living. Thank you.
So many livelihood strategies being implemented simultaneously. A lot of food for thought there. Justine, what does mixed livelihoods looks like in Uganda?
Yeah, we find that mixed livelihood, just like Gabriel has explained in Ghana, it's almost the same in Uganda, where you find that they look at agriculture as the main activity, but then they don't look at it as an income-generating job. It's looked at something which is everyone has to participate in for home consumption. Just its production is home consumption. Those are the rural youths. And they tend to concentrate on other activities for their daily earnings. I have an example of a young boy. He's 19 years old. He's one of my respondents by the names of Sulai, living in Iganga, Eastern region. Sulai is living in a home of 8 people, and he appears to be the elder boy, but then his parents are already old and tired of working. Not very old, but they are tired of working. So this young boy is forced, he forces himself to do a number of livelihood activities. Early in the morning, during the rainy seasons, he gets up, goes to the garden, does cultivation of maize, beans, potatoes, and he tries to mix it with the green vegetables like cabbages, then eggplants. Then later in the afternoons, he is a motorcycle driver. We normally call it boda boda, to transport people from one area to another. And at times, he also does the mechanic part in repairing people's motorcycles. So in doing so, he's able to earn something on a daily basis just to keep the family moving. Sulai is a very hardworking boy. During the dry seasons, when he's not usually in the garden, when he's not active in the garden, you find him doing stone quarrying, using his hands. It was really surprising to me to find such a young boy using a hammer and trying to break stones. Indeed, you could see him really committed to his work, given the hardships, because he has no gadgets, he has nothing to protect his body. The stones are bouncing over to his body, but he persists, and he tells me he's really earning a lot from it, and the home is able to survive on him. So mixed livelihood is just part of every youth in Uganda, and they really actively participate in it. You know?
I was just surprised at how many things you mentioned Sulai does on a yearly basis, and you know how much not only time and effort it demands, but the different type of skills you will require to conduct them all, right? Anne-Marie, I want to finish our round of questions before we open it to the Q&A. And during the video, you had one phrase that maybe people didn't see me, but I was like, wow, that's a very powerful, potent phrase. And you said, mixed livelihoods are seen as a kind of an identity. And you know, we have mixed livelihoods is a very strong statement, but also identity is a very strong one. And I was just hoping that you can help us unpack, and we could spend hours on end, and we will in the afternoon trying to understand this better, but what do you mean by mixed livelihoods as an identity?
Okay, mixed livelihoods, let's take it as meaning multiple income sources. Yes, we find that all our respondents in both countries, practically all of them, they seek multiple income sources. So almost all even aim at having an equal portion of having their own business, practicing agriculture, and getting employment. What surprised us, so we assumed that younger people would still be doing a lot more different activities, and then gradually, as they would move from the age of 18 to 24, we expected to find the older ones to have settled for 1 or 2 activities. But we're finding the opposite. The younger respondents, they might still be studying, and they might just be doing 1 or 2 things at the moment. And then as they grow older, as they reach 24, they're just doing an enormous amount of different things. Really multiple things. Even within agriculture, they might be doing a lot of different crops, and simultaneously a lot of different livestock and various horticulture things. So the other things that we heard was that all the respondents expect to continue this strategy of mixed livelihood throughout their lives. And what we're getting from the data so far, it's of course still early times, it's preliminary data, but people are saying to us, we are not following this strategy purely out of necessity. It's not only as a risk-reducing strategy, but it's very much what we desire to do. It's their choice. So we assumed that we actually asked in the first interview, what do you expect will be your profession later on? And we expected clear answers like, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a farmer. But that kind of answer we don't get back. So now we conclude their identity is mixed livelihoods.
Okay, well, very powerful. And I'm sure that there are a lot of questions from the audience. There's a lot of here to unpack and a lot of here to discuss. We'll try to get at some of those during this panel, and there will be more time in the afternoon to discuss that in more detail. But I will take questions in groups of 3. So I will ask you to raise your hand, wait until the mic gets to you, state who you are and where you're coming from, and do a question, not a statement, because I will cut you off. So I have this young gentleman here, and then this a lady here. There was a hand here. So 2 gentlemen there, and then I have another gentleman here. Ladies, don't let me down with your questions. So yes, please.
Thank you. Syriac from the University of the Western Cape in South Africa. Very brief question for you, Justine and Gabriel. Land access for rural young people, how does it look like in Ghana and Kenya? And also the labor, who controls the labor? In other ways, can they farm independently from their family, or someone else control the labor? And I thought what to do. The last question, and then I sit down. Gabriel, in Ghana, I think there are a lot of foreigner investment in agriculture going into that country. How does it affect the rural livelihoods for young people? In other way, where you are working, do they provide, opportunities, or do they cross them out? Yeah, I want to know about that.
Thank you. Gentleman behind. Any of the 2 there? I'll get to the second one later on.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Anthony Aguero from Raw Forum. I'm basically a system psychologist specializing in pastoral areas, but I work as a grants assistance manager. And my thinking is, taking forward your analysis, probably it's something that we borrow so much from pastoral livelihoods. I would be probably very interested to see how you'd further extend the analysis to do the youth adaptive capacity, absorptive capacity, and their transformative capacity. Those 3 components would be very crucial in getting the real meat and synthesis from your research.
Can you repeat the 3 components so that I can make sure that we address them? Transformative capacity and then?
Absorptive capacity and their adaptive capacity. You start from the absorptive capacity at household level, then their adaptive capacity, and then their transformative capacity, ability to create new things out of the changing circumstances.
Perfect. And then I had a gentleman on this side of the room.
Thank you. My name is Tom Jane from Michigan State University. Thank you very much, panelists, for giving us this interesting perspective on Youth Diaries. My question is whether there are the diaries identified any public actions or private sector programs that were particularly helpful for the youth. It'd be nice to draw out examples of what's working and maybe things that need to be happening by either the public sector that are not currently there. Can you help us identify those things, please? Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we'll try to answer these first 3 questions, and then we'll do another round, and we'll do as many rounds as we have time, as I realize we are standing between you and lunch. So, Justine, there was a question about land access and how land access, impacts the capacity of young people to farm.
In Uganda, we normally have it that land belongs to the clan, and to a few individuals who can afford, they can buy their own plots. But then we find that since we are dealing with the youths who are majorly rural-based, youths who are majorly school dropouts, they really have little or no access to the land because for the girls, they are regarded as a waste in the community. So nobody is really ready to help them. Then for the boys, they are given a small piece of land by their parents, but which isn't all that enough to enable them participate actively in the farm. And I have an example of a lady. This lady, she got married to a young boy, and the couple is comprising of 2 young people who were given land, and this land had a coffee plantation which had been ignored for some years. So it was a bushy area having coffee inside it. So when this young couple started cultivating on this land, indeed they took good care of the coffee, and after 1 or 2 years, the coffee came out well. And now the other relatives came up. They want to take back the land because they are seeing how good that particular land is. So you find that these youths are really suffering. They try hard to acquire what they really want, but land access is really a big problem to them. Yeah.
Thank you, Justine. And I was very excited to hear one of the key speakers, the Deputy Prime Minister this morning, actually recognizing that if we don't fix land access, then how can we actually keep or move the conversation about agriculture forward? Gabriel, there was also this question about foreign direct investment in agriculture in Ghana. So very large international companies coming to Ghana and investing a lot of money in the sector. And is that affecting in every way the livelihoods of young people in the area in which you're working?
Very much for that question. There are a lot of organizations actually coming to Ghana to invest on agriculture. Even Ghana has identified agriculture as one of the economic pillars of the country. But these communities in which we are doing the research, there are very rural areas that we do not have these organizations yet reaching there. We are only hoping that with time, they will move into those areas to help the youth there. But for now, it's basically their traditional way of doing things. We don't have these organizations reaching there, but except those who are in schools and then those who have advanced in education who are taking advantage of these things. But with the youth who have not yet gone to that level of education are still doing their own local way.
Anne-Marie, I know that you want to maybe add a little bit to that, but also before maybe you can do it all together, there was also, because you're looking at the data coming from the 2 countries, there was a question about if through that data have you been able to recognize any public actions or private sector actions that youth recognize or that seem to be working at the local level, and if there's anything for us to learn from that. And also the gentleman who asked about the analysis going from observative to adaptative to transformative capacity, and have you seen or have you been able to include questions or conduct analysis on that, or are you planning to conduct analysis on that?
To be very honest, we do probe for that kind of information, and at least young people very rarely have access to any extension services or any seed programs, or we have not come across anything. We've selected the areas disregarding any programs, so this is just sort of supposedly could be quite random population of young people. What we do find, it's not exactly private sector, but we do find in Uganda an enormous amount of respondents, and even male respondents who are part of savings groups. We still have to find out a lot more. What type of savings groups? Do they mean normal roskas that they started up themselves, or do they mean
more style savings groups that are induced from outside or second generation induced. We see these savings groups very rarely reported in Ghana. We intend to look into this in greater detail. Maybe we like your question because LIFT is specifically intending to focus on doing impact measurement through financial diaries or livelihoods diaries. So the Youth Start financial diaries was very much about measuring the difference between those people who were having a youth account from AXI or from FUSEC in Togo, and people who didn't have such an account. And so those diaries did really show quite a significant difference in savings behavior of the ones who did have the formal savings account, and those youth saved a tremendously higher percentage in formal forms, and the control group much more in informal forms.
Okay. Great. Do I have 3 more questions? All gentlemen say, oh, there's a lady in the back there. She'll get priority. And then 2 and 3. And then second lady for the next round, I promise. Yes.
I'm Bessie Thuranira from Kenya. I would want to ask Justine, now that you're talking about the mixed livelihoods of the youth, which is the same case everywhere, even in Kenya, you find that most of them just do quite a number of things for a living, not just agriculture. Don't you think that's a limitation, like they are not able to concentrate on one line, yet agriculture can be like a full-time employment and can provide that source of living that they are looking for, instead of, let's say, the case study you gave, instead of that boy having to go to do the stonework and all that. So what can be done to help them scale up their interest in the agriculture instead of the mixed livelihood style of doing things? Thank you.
That's $1 million question, right? So if we figure that question out, then it will be a very successful panel. I had a second question up front here. Yeah, the gentleman in the blue shirt.
Hi, I'm Chris McClay from Mercy Corps, based in Liberia. It's the sort of obvious question. We in Liberia recently changed from saying we could create employment to improve portfolios of work, but that has huge implications in terms of complexity of programming, because you're working on so many more things at the same time. What are the implications of your research in terms of accepting that young people are improving their mixed livelihoods or portfolios of work from a programming perspective?
Also $1 million question. And then I had a gentleman up front here. Yeah, the gentleman with the cream jacket.
My name is Leo Johnson from Liberia as well. My question is about your research on mixed livelihood. Have you ever investigated a little more as to whether youth are embracing mixed livelihood or have been subjected to it simply because of the environment and all of the challenges that they have to go through? So they find themselves doing 20 different things just to survive. Based on your respondents, was that something that's just they're excited about doing or see as an opportunity, or they are forced to because of the circumstances?
Okay, great, thank you. So Justine, the first question was addressed to you, and also maybe, Gabriel, you can also give your perspective from Ghana, so to both of you. Mixed livelihoods as a limitation, and if we are doing so many things, or if young people are doing so many things at the same time, how can then concentrate on growing one specific livelihood? Do you see that as a limitation? And is there anything that we could do to promote young people's interest in agriculture?
We find that many youths in the African regions are carrying out mixed livelihoods and ignoring the concentration on a particular project, so like agriculture. But the reason as to why they are doing it is that they lack the skills. And one of the things I talked about was these people are normally school dropouts. So it becomes difficult for them to ensure that there is continuous farming throughout the year. So that's why they are ending up into mixed livelihoods, because they have to get something for their days. And because they cannot perform they can't perform agriculture, so like irrigation, they cannot have horticulture throughout the year. We find them moving to other employment opportunities other than agriculture. And maybe what I could advise is that, and what is I could advise, and it is somehow taking place, is that there are organizations. For example, in Uganda, we have an organization called Restless Development. It is moving into the rural areas, looking for such youths who are really ready to participate in agriculture, but they lack the skills and maybe the inputs. So they tend to provide them with some trainings on how to cultivate throughout the year. And of course, out of these trainings, some of them have really benefited and they are carrying out agriculture throughout the year, but still they are not all that into it. Like for this young boy I talked about, Sulai. At first, he was only looking at maize growing and beans. But with the coming up of Restless, with the coming up of Africa 2000, it's also an NGO in Uganda, he has learned how to grow green vegetables. And he's growing them in a somehow swampy area, and he's able to draw water using a jerry can and try to water the crops. In so doing, he can at least make a living throughout the year from agriculture. That's how they are trying to fight it, but still, we can't hide it. They are doing it as a part-time job.
And Gabriel, what are your thoughts about that?
I will say in Ghana, it's, or in our part of the region where we are doing the research, it's just because they cannot, there are no jobs that they can keep for a very long period, maybe because they do not have the qualification or the necessary skills. So the youth, they lay their hands on the next job that they get. After a certain time, they move on because probably what the job they are doing for the very moment is over. Maybe they just get a period for a month, a job for a month, and then they move on. So that is why they keep on changing jobs. So I think for now, we're hoping that something will be done about it, but there are no strategies for, which are being taken place for now.
And Anne-Marie, there were a couple of questions about the implications of this research in terms of programming, which is obviously a big question. So, you know, for the past few decades, programming and policy has focused on this idea that we're training young people to get a job or to become an entrepreneur on a sector. And now that we're finding out they're doing all these multiple things, they want to continue doing them, and they are planning to do it for life. So what do we do with our programs and policies? And also, are young people choosing mixed livelihoods, or are they being forced into mixed livelihoods?
The last bit, no, they're definitely not forced into mixed livelihoods. What exactly goes on in their arguments, we still don't know exactly, but it's definitely a choice. And at the moment, it's a preference. The implications of this finding and several other findings definitely has, hopefully, will impact on policy. But we feel that our research is very much about providing the evidence. And now it's up to the policymakers or program designers or whoever has that job to go with our findings. We provide the evidence, and now it's their turn.
A lot more job coming up, right? Do we still have time for one more round of questions? No, they're getting very negative signs from the back. Sorry, guys. But you can come and talk to any of our panelists during the lunch break. So before we wrap up, just a very few final thoughts, and that we can take into the discussion for this afternoon. This issue of mixed livelihoods and what are the implications for programming and policy, especially taking into account this focus on just one thing, but also thinking about, how do we provide skills training in the scenario of a mixed livelihood? Like, what skills for which one of all the mixed livelihoods, and how do we choose the skills that are relevant to which livelihoods, right? So that's one big question. Also the fact that agriculture continues to be a consistent part of young people's lives. They do want to maintain engagement in agriculture, but if we take into account this background of mixed livelihoods, then how do we support agriculture within this context? And what are some of the implications that these findings will have, again, in programming and policy design? And finally, just to tell you that LIFT is continuing the research for another 6 months. They will continue to collect data, and we hope that in 6 months, this data will be, analyzed and put into a beautiful report that a few of us cannot wait to see what the results will be. So make sure that you check out the Foundation's website regularly to find out more about it, and I'm sure they'll do their best effort to let you know when the report is out as well. Thank you very much, all. Jason, I think you have an important announcement about lunch, right? Food, yay.